Hello, my name is Susan K. Thomas, and today I will be presenting my proposal titled Preserving the Queer Past, Archival Outreach in Rural Kansas. In this presentation, I will describe the background, the research problem, the purpose of the study, the hypothesis, the study's methods, data collection, research limitations, and the project schedule. Finally, I will conclude with my final reflection on the project. I will note at this time that this project is completely fictional and has no actual connection to the Kenneth Spencer Research Library or the University of Kansas. The research problem. For the lesbian and gay community, the struggle for space has not only been a quest for physical space within a hegemonic straight society, but also for broader social acceptance, often through legal recognition of equal rights. As a marginalized group, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, or LGBTQ, community continues to struggle to maintain an active intellectual presence in the absence of physical records that effectively document the history of the people. The Queer Archive resists the silence imposed by the dominant society by challenging any possible eradication through the establishment of queer space that retains the community's history. Over the past 70 years, private spaces have been established to collect LGBTQ archives. The Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives in Toronto, the Lesbian Herstory Archives in New York, New York, the One National Gay and Lesbian Archives in Los Angeles, and the Leather Archives and Museum in Chicago. All retain substantial collections of documentation and ephemera in an attempt to preserve North American queer history. One significant issue is that these archives exist in cities, away from rural spaces, and until recently, these archives have had little to no online presence. Additionally, these archives rarely reflect the rural lives of LGBTQ individuals who have chosen to remain in those communities. Within the past 20 years, more open access institutions across the country, such as public universities, historical societies, and museums, have started to collect LGBTQ materials. Unfortunately, LGBTQ people are often unaware that they have access to these facilities or that the institutions are interested in including their personal papers to create a more inclusive LGBTQ history. The hypothesis. In planning the project and developing a hypothesis, the study's goal and outcomes clarified and expanded focus beyond the number of donations that archives and museums might receive to the increase in interactions with LGBTQ individuals at these institutions due to archival outreach. There will be a null hypothesis and a hypothesis should the null hypothesis be rejected. The null hypothesis. There is no significant change in inquiries at archives and museums by LGBTQ identified people following outreach through Pride and education events. The hypothesis. There is a significant increase in inquiries at archives and museums by LGBTQ identified people following outreach through Pride and education events. The purpose of study. The study seeks to educate rural LGBTQ individuals about the value of personal papers and options for end-of-life planning for personal papers by conducting archival outreach at local events throughout the state of Kansas. Success will be reflected in an increase in contacts from LGBTQ identified people at archives and museums across the state. Literature review. In 2010, Morna Gerard became involved with a group of activists and archivists to found the Georgia LGBTQ Archives Project. Prior to the group's establishment, archivists in different areas of the state had been documenting LGBTQ history by quietly collecting community records. The organization incorporated documentation strategy into their project plan as members from different institutions wished to connect donors with the facilities that were best suited to the donors' materials. The Georgia LGBTQ Archives Project's outreach explained the process of donation and educated attendees on the types of questions they should ask institutions when considering donation in order to choose the right facility for the donor and the materials. The organization's goal was not to pressure donation, but to educate people on the significance of documenting life decisions about personal papers, and to stress the value of personal papers in LGBTQ history, which individuals do not often see in their own materials. Institutions within the state of Georgia have seen an increase in inquiries about donating materials, as well as donations from LGBTQ individuals as a result of the Georgia LGBTQ Archive Project's outreach. Including archivists and activists, organizations have also increased visibility for the project, often with information traveling by word of mouth. Archivists were able to develop trust with community members, which has resulted in positive effects for the project. Methods. The project will use documentation strategy, which involves the collaboration of multiple entities that includes record creators, archives, and users. Archivists at the University of Kansas's Kenneth Spencer Research Library will reach out to the Kansas Historical Society, Kansas County Historical Societies, museums, university archives, and activist organizations across the state to create an organization that will connect archives and museums with potential LGBTQ donors. The Kenneth Spencer Research Library will collect email addresses from different institutions and organizations and send a survey to assess interest. The first goal is to recruit people to create a new organization and select a board of directors that will be involved in creating a charter and a project plan. The project plan will identify institutions that are interested in responding to inquiries from LGBTQ patrons about LGBTQ donations or willing to add queer materials to their holdings, or are willing to direct inquiries to other institutions. The plan will also include an outreach program to rural communities in the state of Kansas to educate LGBTQ people about the significance of queer rural lives in LGBTQ history, as well as inform on end-of-life options for personal papers. When considering the needs of LGBTQ people, the project plan will include a discretionary statement that volunteers will be asked to sign and follow that ensures the privacy of individuals with whom the organization will interact. The project plan will include a training plan for volunteers who will be performing outreach, a detailed timeline through September 2024, and a budget. After establishing a project plan, the organization will begin to plan advertising and tabling with 2021 Pride events. The goal for tabling at events will be to create visibility for the project. The organization will create a calendar of Pride events and begin to outline a strategy for tabling, including designing postcards, business cards, and a banner. Press releases about the project will be sent to LGBTQ print and online forums. Visibility will be key, and often information in rural areas is disseminated by word of mouth, so both large and small forums and LGBTQ organizations will be included in distribution. The organization will also develop an online presence on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to advertise the project and distribute information. Tabling at events will consist of creating a presence at gay pride events to distribute information about the project and to collect information from interested individuals who wish to be contacted for more information. Table volunteers will have completed training about presentation of the organization's goals, which is to educate. While volunteers want to gain project awareness, they also need to refrain from being aggressive or pressuring and must also enforce the project's ability to be discreet for those who fear being outed in their communities. Tabling is the first connection that the LGBT community may have with archives, so volunteers must be able to respond to questions about collections, donations, and locations of archives and museums in the state. Some donors may be interested in the project, but only if their materials are kept locally. Others may have questions about donations and anonymity. Being able to counsel on a range of options is integral to the project's success. Tabling events are meant to create visibility and open up opportunities for educational events where volunteers can share information about archives and museums within the state that have LGBTQ holdings and identify which institutions are open to accepting donations. Community members often do not understand the significance of their personal papers and how they relate to queer history. Educational events provide an opportunity to describe the types of collections that exist and how personal papers contain significant historical content because of how they reflect individual lives. These events are not meant to pressure donors, but to bring awareness and to educate. Data collection. Data will be collected at Pride and education events regarding numbers of interactions or those in attendance, respectively. This information will be recorded in an Excel spreadsheet so as to collect numbers for each event. Within participating institutions, staff members will document calls and inquiries about collections and donations for each year of the project. Facilities usually have appraisal and donor records, but institutions may not have data for inquiries. Participating institutions will track inquiries whether through phone calls, emails, social media messages, or in-person visits. All inquiries should be documented, even if not specific to the project. This data will allow the organization to determine what percentage of inquiries about LGBTQ collections or donations, if any, are made. If the person making the inquiry is willing, volunteers will collect data about how the person learned about donating materials, which may assist in determining if Pride and education events are linked to an increase in inquiries. Institutions will collect data by month and include the total number of inquiries for the institution and the total number of inquiries specific to LGBTQ materials for each month. Data collection will begin January 1st, 2021 and end December 31st, 2023, culminating in 3 years of data. In 2024, the organization will distribute a second survey and request data about LGBTQ inquiries and donations. The data will be compiled in an Excel spreadsheet by county and institution and by month and year. A descriptive statistical analysis will be performed on each county's data using Excel. The descriptive statistical analysis will include measures of central tendencies, such as mode, mean, median, range, and standard deviation. The data for each county and institution will be compared with event data to measure influence on events against inquiries. Additionally, data will be compared between counties to determine fluxes and increases in inquiries related to events within the state. Study findings will be released to participating institutions in September 2024. Research limitations. The project contains a number of research limitations that can restrict progress. In 2020, the state of Kansas, like the rest of the country, has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, forcing businesses and schools to shut down and requiring citizens to stay in their place of residence. Because of the pandemic, research studies have paused, events have been canceled through most of the year, and people are not traveling. The goal for this project is to use 2020 and the first part of 2021 to begin planning the project, including reaching out to individuals to garner interest for the project. With COVID-19 having future unknown effects, there is no way to anticipate at this time whether events and travel restrictions will continue into next summer's festival season, when the project hopes to begin advertising to local communities by attending local gay pride celebrations. The project may also be hindered by low numbers of volunteers. Volunteers from the local institutions and local activists are necessary to make this project successful. The project anticipates that county historical societies will not be interested in accepting LGBTQ materials into their existing collections, and donors may fear being outed by donating there. However, local volunteers who are known by the LGBTQ community will assist in building trust, especially because donors must be ensured of complete discretion, since being outed in their community could mean family abandonment, loss of financial stability, or even danger to physical being or property. Additionally, all volunteers must be trained to disseminate information similarly, know when to consult with the large organization, and know how to effectively network with other institutions when acting as a liaison for a donor. Some donors may choose to place restrictions on their materials, such as keeping them closed for a specific period of time to protect themselves and others named in the materials. Volunteers will possess documentation of which institutions are willing to work under these guidelines. There will also likely be limitations in data collection if an LGBTQ identified person making an inquiry does not identify themselves as being a person of that community. Additionally, an increase in queries will be difficult to gauge if the institution has not kept records of previous year's patron interactions. Project schedule. The project schedule uses 2020 to establish an organization that will create a charter and project plan, and to begin the project groundwork for making contacts. The first 3 months of each year in 2021 to 2023 is used for planning for tabling at Pride events. The decision was made to not conduct in-person education events during the first 3 months because of winter weather and a potential relapse of COVID-19. Summers will be used to table at Pride and to conduct localized education events. October through November are used to reach out to those who express further interest in the project after making contact at Pride and education events. During 2024, the organization will distribute a survey to collect data from institutions regarding number of inquiries of donations and visits from LGBTQ identified individuals. Personal reflections. My inspiration for this project comes from two places: the Bruce McKinney collection at the Kenneth Spencer Research Library at the University of Kansas, which I processed 10 years ago, and KU librarian Tammy Albans' Under the Rainbow Oral History Project. Both indicated to me that there are LGBTQ identified individuals who do not understand that they have access to materials in open access institutions, like university libraries, and also have personal papers of which they don't understand the value in queer history and may be threatened by an individual's fear of exposure or by a family's attempt at erasure. As I worked, I realized that there are key factors that would make this project successful or completely bomb. Participation from volunteers such as archivists and activists to network and conduct outreach is a necessary component of this project's success. A guarantee of discretion and the creation of trust with rural LGBTQ identified individuals is a necessity. Finally, a well-organized group that represents the different institutions throughout Kansas can ground the project and build diversity within the organization. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. This is a project that I would like to see come into being as I do believe in its significance.